Still cracks me up. How we doing, Cedarbrook? This is a party in here. That's incredible. Hey, my name is James Brown. I'm one of the pastors at this place. And if you are new with us, I just want to personally welcome you. So glad that you are here today. In fact, you stopped in on an awesome Sunday because we are right smack dab, week 3, in the middle of this teaching series called Joy Bombs. And just so you know, one of the great joys of my life over the last year has been joining the Cedarbrook staff and getting to know the staff. Oh, just great admiration. It has been an incredible experience. One of the other great joys as well has been getting to know Kyle, the lead pastor, and then how he works. And if there is one word to describe Kyle and how he comes to work, it is the word efficiency. Efficiency. Kyle likes things moving forward at a steady clip with minimal amount of interruptions and then concluding in a timely manner. And I appreciate that about him. I respect that about him. I got to be honest with you, though, for me, I am not exceptional at the efficiency part of things, with the exception of one area in my life, and that is this: the grocery store checkout line. Okay? Anybody feel me here on the grocery store checkout line? Yeah. If there any of you here potentially that play the short line game, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, this is what I play all the time. I go, it's time to check out, I scan all the lines, and analyze which one's going to be the fastest. And I don't know what your prediction algorithm is, but my prediction algorithm goes like this. What I do is I look at the lines and I add up the number of items in the person in front of me, their cart, and then I multiply that number by the estimated age of the shopper, and then I divide that number by the estimated weight of the purse or wallet to determine the number of seconds that it's going to take me to get through the line. And then what I do is that I race to the line that I think is going to be the shortest, but I always keep one eye on the other lines to make sure that I pick the right one. So that's my prediction algorithm. You may have your own, but for me, the success rate, 50% of the time, works every time. That's just how it goes, right? Anybody else play the short line game but me? Yeah, okay, a lot of us do. If you don't play the short line game, that's fine. You may play another game. Parents play this game. It's kind of like fake games with your kids to get them to hurry up. You know, it sort of went like this. All right, Gianna, we're going to play a game. Ready? Let's see how fast you can get in the bath and into bed. This is going to be so much fun. Let's see if we can beat the record from last night. Ready, set, go, right? I played that game as well. And my question is, why do we do that? Why do we do that? Maybe you have as well. Short line game, kid with hurry up game, or another game. Why do we feel like we've got to rush around in this life? Why such the hurry when it comes to doing these sort of things? Why do we feel like constantly that we are always all in a race, where we are all running around trying to beat the death clocks in this pace that's fast and furious? Or we're running around so that we're out of breath and we're not even enjoying the life that God has given us to live. And maybe even though we don't know where we're running to or from, we're making a really good time, right? But why do we feel compelled to do that? And maybe we are making great time, but maybe making great time isn't the issue that we should be focusing on. Maybe it's probably not even the goal after all. Now, actually, if there is an upside to this last year, the 2020 year, if there's an upside to sort of this never-ending, constant COVID quarantining, it was the fact that it forced us to slow our pace down enough so that we can think about life things, like where are we going? Where are we running to? What are we doing? And all the places that we're running to, do these destinations even matter? Do these activities that we're going to, do they even matter in the long run? You see, instead of the endlessly running to meetings and engagements and practices and games and activities, during this last year, we were sort of able to slow down and begin to ask questions about what we're doing, asking the question, am I even running the right race? Am I on the right track? Am I knocking myself out for the right things, for the right rewards in life? And one thing I know is that the pace that we've experienced this last year will not last forever. It just won't. Before we know it, we're going to be back at maximum speed again, rushing and rushing around. We're going to be there again. And I just want to pause right now today and make sure that this time we do it right. That if there are races that we've been running that we don't need to be running anymore, we can identify what those are. So that the next year, this year, and beyond, that we will be striving and straining for the right things, that we will be chasing after the things that will ultimately bring us the joy that we're looking for, that we're longing for in our lives. So in order to get to that kind of destination, we're going to consult our running coach, the Apostle Paul, who is the author of the letter, Philippians, that we've been looking at as a part of this Joy Bombs series. And we've been looking at this letter that he wrote every week. And what we've been discovering is that it actually is possible to find joy in some of the most challenging circumstances that we find ourselves in. And so we've been going back every week as part of the series, and we're going to go back to Philippians today because the Apostle Paul actually has something to say about the races that we run and the destinations we are moving toward. So if you have a Bible or if you have a Bible app with you today, I want to just encourage you, if you want, to join me in Philippians chapter 3. Philippians chapter 3. And while you're going there, check out verse 14. We're going to start there because Paul sets up this destination situation this way. He says this. He says, I press on to reach the end of the race and receive the heavenly prize for which God through Christ is calling us. Here's what he says. I press on to reach the end of the race so that I can receive the heavenly prize for which God through Christ Jesus is calling us. Now, if you're a note taker, or if you're a Bible underliner kind of person, I want to encourage you to circle or highlight or underline two words in that verse. And the two words are race and prize. Race and prize. Race and prize. And because this is a unique letter, the language in this letter is a little bit unique as well. Paul uses this kind of running language in this letter and in other letters throughout the New Testament as well. He uses this kind of running idea that he carries with him in through a couple different books, which I think is really interesting that he would choose this word or this idea because if you remember from maybe previous weeks, Paul is actually chained up to a guard in a Roman prison at this moment, which means that he isn't walking around, let alone running anywhere. So it's interesting that he would choose to use this word. I think that's interesting. The second thing I think that is interesting is that some things never actually change. I mean, he's talking about something that might be more relevant to us right now than it ever has been. I mean, after 2,000 years since this letter has been written, we are still running races and we are still chasing after prizes. For example, when we're younger, we run what I'll call the popularity race. This is a big race in middle schools and high schools all across America, everywhere. It's this race to be liked and accepted and valued and included. And those who run this race, they knock themselves out to hang out with the right crowd. And my guess is that you've been involved in this race in school. You ran this race when you were in school. I definitely did. And to be honest with you, it's super weird now watching my daughter trying to find her lane in this race now as well. And by the way, I didn't win this race. Big shocker, huh? Yeah? You laugh, but I didn't come in last either, just so you know. But like all of us, I did run it. I was running it. I was running to get invited to the right parties and to date the right person and to sit at the right lunchroom table. I mean, that's what the essence of the popularity race is all about. But then we get out of school and we start running a different race. I'll call it the success race. And this race is all about getting the things that we're told that we need to get to be successful. The right recognition from the right people at work, the right house in the right area or the right city or the right street, the right salary to buy all the right toys and to go on all the right trips, the right nest egg so that you can retire to the right place at the right time. And the prize that we're told that's part of this particular race is joy and happiness. But the funny thing is about this race is that it's really hard to hang on to that prize, especially when there is a global pandemic going on. I mean, that prize of the success race can get fairly slippery and elusive, kind of like trying to hold on to a greased watermelon with no shirt on in 110-degree weather, right? That's a little game we play in Southwest Ohio. I don't know, maybe it's not up here. But that's what it's like. I mean, those are the two biggie races that most of us run. There are lots and dozens of other races that you might be a part of, but those are the main ones that we often find ourselves running in. The adult race, the success race, is often called the rat race. So I'm thinking the adolescent one maybe be called the mouse race or whatever, because kind of preparing you for the rat race when you get older. And Paul says that's how it's always been, 2,000 years ago to today, that this sort of racing around trying to get things and do things and be things is how it's always been. But he says that even though that's the case, true happiness, joy, is never going to be found in the finish line of those races. In fact, Philippians 3 says that the key to life, the path to finding joy, is shifting races, changing races to the right race. Think of it this way, if you want to try to remember what we're talking about today, that joy comes when we shift from the rat race, or whatever race that you're in right now, from the rat race to the right race, from the rat race to the right race. And what's amazing is that Paul is teaching us this, not some theory, but he's teaching it to us from experience. Because even though Paul was, his vocation was religion, he was at the top of his field. If there was somebody that was an up-and-comer in this first century world, it was Paul. His accomplishments were up and to the right. He was esteemed. He was getting special projects. He was getting recognized for his work. But it's right in the middle of that. He says, even though I've had all of these things, something has changed for me, because he had this life-changing encounter with Jesus. And he talks about it in Philippians chapter 3, verse 8. He says this. He says, yes, everything else, talking about all of the accolades, all of the recognition, all the success that he's had. He says, everything else that I've experienced as part of running this race, everything else is worthless. Worthless. Yeah, it's worthless when compared to the infinite value of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord. For his sake, I've discarded everything else, all of those things, counting it as garbage, so that I could gain Christ and become one with him. This was his big aha moment, that in his pursuit of more and better and fame and influence, that he realized that the most important thing in life is not those things, winning those things, but rather the most important thing is his pursuit of Jesus and that relationship. Paul decided to get into the right race of knowing Christ and following Christ and serving Christ. And in fact, that's how we think about it here at Cedarbrook, that the point of this place is to help people connect to a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. That's what Cedarbrook is all about, but in fact, that's what God is all about, because he designed you for that very thing. That the race that you run in this life would not be for these other accomplishments, but the right race takes you right to God. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is simply this: is that the race I'm running? The race that I just described, the one that goes to God, is this the race I'm running? Is a growing personal relationship with Jesus the prize that I'm knocking myself out for? Is knowing and following and serving Christ my big deal on a daily basis? And if it's not, I want you to know that's okay, because the good news is that it can be. You can begin to incrementally move from the lane that you're in to another race altogether. In fact, the fact that you are here today or watching online is a great stride in moving toward that goal. In fact, Coach Paul coaches us that in order to do that, in order to make that move to knowing Christ and following him more closely, there are a few things that he did that we should do as well. And the first thing that he says that we need to do to shift lanes and get in the right race is to focus on the right goal. To focus on the right goal. Now, let's be honest. Very few people set spiritual goals like getting to know Christ better. I mean, maybe we set New Year's resolutions like, I'm going to read my Bible more, I'm going to pray more, or something like that. But very few of us set the goal of, I want to know Christ more. And as a result, the relationship with Jesus that we have becomes just one of the other many things that we have to do on a daily basis. We start off with really good intentions, but the problem is God is usually the very first thing that gets pushed out when push comes to shove. Let me illustrate it this way. Quick survey here. Real quick, this is my least favorite day of the year. Daylight savings time, I think, is of the devil, right? So this is my least favorite time. So in honor of this horrible demonic day, let me just do this little survey here. How many of you, and just be honest, this is a place to be honest. How many of you, first thing you do when you hear the alarm clock in the morning is hit the snooze button? Yeah, most of us. I did it twice this morning, just so you know. How many of you, and you can answer more than once, by the way, how many of you know you're going to hit the snooze button once, a few times, so you go ahead and plan that into your schedule by setting your alarm clock 10, 20, 30 minutes in advance? Yeah, quite a few as well. Okay, let me keep pushing a little further. How many of you intentionally set your phone or your alarm clock on the opposite side of the room because you know that if you don't, you will end up hitting snooze button 300-400 times? Yeah, you're across the room, people. Good. How many of you, and be honest, how many of you still get up, walk across the room, hit snooze, and go back to bed? Yeah? Yeah, I feel your pain, all right? Now, this was maybe my most controversial question of this quick survey here, and I just be honest. How many of you just jump right out of bed when the alarm clock goes off? Oh, you are sick people. We're going to have a prayer team up here. They're going to meet with you, pray for you. Yeah, good for you, right? Now, the bottom line is that God doesn't treat us like that. He doesn't enter our life like some annoying alarm clock. He's not going to bug us into spending time with him, into developing that relationship. Jesus won't force his way into our priority list. I mean, whether we need to feel like we have to hit the snooze button 37 times in the morning, or whether or not our kids need to be shuttled off to practice, or whether or not that work project needs to be done like yesterday, even though all that's going on, he won't compete with everything that we've got going on in our lives. It's an invitation to join him. And if I've learned anything in my life, I've discovered that if having a growing relationship with Jesus is a priority for you, it will inevitably affect your schedule and your task list. Or I could say it this way: if it doesn't make your schedule or your task list, it's not a priority. Rather, it's just an intention. It's a really good one, but it's just an intention. So in order to move it to a priority, we've got to learn from Paul here. And I love what he says in verse 13. He says it this way. He says, I have not achieved it. I've not become perfect. I don't have the most awesomest relationship with God. I'm not the person that he's designed me to be just yet. I've not achieved it, but in order to get there, I focus on these 47 things. Is that what he says? No, that's not what he says. Paul says, I've not achieved it. I'm not there yet. God's still working on me. That relationship is still growing. But in order for me to keep it growing, I focus on this one thing. And I think maybe our inability to do that, to focus on the one thing, might be why so many of us are not able to make the sort of spiritual progress that we want to in our lives, because we're trying to do too much stuff at the exact same time. We're not able to grow like we want to grow because we've got too many irons in the fire. And to be completely honest with you, sometimes the church, even this church, doesn't help with that at all. In fact, one of the things we're doing right now as a staff is we're beginning to schedule again. And scheduling always makes me nervous, right? Because you got to lock stuff down, right? And you get to see the byproduct of that in the announcement time that we have every single week. And one of the things for me as I try to project what it's like to sit in your seat during the service, one of the things that kind of stresses me out about the announcements is that I never want you to think that you have to do it all. Because we're gonna announce Small groups are starting and mission trips are happening and discover this and discover that and give here and go there and do it and do it and do it. And I've talked to enough people that get frustrated by that process and they're like, I want to do more, but I can't do it all. I can't do it all. And so I just want to give you some parameters to be able to think about how you can continue to grow and have meaningful involvement here as you develop that relationship with Jesus. And I totally stole it from Panera. I totally stole it from Panera. It's called the pick two, right? Panera is like soup and a whatever, like merge them together. It's magic, right? So that's like pick two. And what I would encourage you to do is you think about your next step this year that you would pick two big, meaningful things that you can do to grow that relationship with God. So maybe for you what that is that you decide to get baptized and to go on a mission trip this year. Those are your two. Or maybe you take the Discover classes and you join a small group or something like that. What is that? So begin to pray. Ask God, what two do you want me to do, God? And then take those steps because we can't do everything. And that's why Paul says you got to focus on the right goal, the one thing. But that's not it. He says there's also something else. If you want to know Christ better, Paul says, not just focus on the right goal, but focus on the right voices. Focus on the right voices. And here's how he describes it. Skip down to verse 17. He says it this way. He says, "Dear brothers and sisters, pattern your lives after mine and learn from those who follow our examples." He's saying to this group in Philippi, he's saying, make sure that you have people around you that are speaking into your life so that you know what the right race looks like. Because connecting to the right voices is crucial when it comes to staying in the right race. I mean, we need like-minded people around us, people that will keep us on track, going in the same direction. So let me ask you, who are you patterning your life after? Whose example are you following? As you think about that question, let me just give you a quote by a guy named Jim Rohn. He said it this way. I think it's very interesting to think about. He said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." You are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So let's just take Jim at his word here for a second and ask ourselves some tough questions like, who do you spend the most time with personally? Who is surrounding you? What voices do you have speaking into your life? Who is building into, who's investing in you personally? Who's advising you? Who's guiding you? Who's mentoring you? Think about this question. Do the people that you spend the most time with represent the kind of person that you want to be in 1 year or 3 years or 5 years? Are the people closest to you helping you grow into the person that God has designed you to be? Because you become the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And just so you know, I think this is exactly why people who are training for like marathons or long runs, they like to train with other people. They like to train together because when you train, when you run with like-minded individuals, people who are running on the same road as you, going in the same direction, it dramatically increases the chance that you will actually finish the race. For me personally, if I were to ever run a marathon, I would want a bunch of people around me. Not necessarily to speak into my life, but to carry me down the road because I would need that very early on in the marathon. That's why they do that. And so that's what Paul is saying to us. Focus on the right voices so that when the voices of our society say, you should do it, you should buy it, you should take it, you should smoke it, you should click on it, you should date it, you should move in with it because it's okay. It's not that bad. After all, you deserve it. And when those voices start to pop up around you, that's why we need the right voices in our lives. So that when those other voices continue to increase and get louder and louder, you can listen to the right voice and still stay on the right course, running the right race. I would also say, in addition to listening to people that you're spending time with, you should also be listening to God's voice in God's word. God's given us his Bible. He's given us his story so that we can hear his voice of wisdom. We can listen to that voice so that it makes our life better and that it actually makes us better at living life. It's impossible, I would suggest, that you can't run that right race that we're talking about today if you are not spending time in the scriptures on a regular basis, because that's how we get to know what the finish line looks like. That's how we get to know Jesus better. So the bottom line is, Paul says it all starts with our focus. Paul says, I focus on the right goals and I focus on the right voices in order to know Christ, in order to have that growing relationship with Jesus, in order to make that the top priority of my life. That's what Paul says that he does. The question is, what will we do? Will we make the decision? Will we take the steps to change lanes so that where we are running is heading toward a growing relationship with Jesus? Let me close with this quote. Lily Tomlin once said, she said, all my life, I wanted to be somebody. Now I see that I should have been more specific. I love that. Because what it says to us is that every race heads somewhere. There is a destination to every race that we run. Everybody ends up somewhere, but only the people with focus end up somewhere on purpose. So, where is the race you are running? Where is it taking you? In that race, who specifically are you becoming? Our prayer, our hope, our desire is that you are someone who is growing closer to Christ and getting closer to the person that he's designed you to be. And when you do this, when you step off the wrong path and onto the right road, when you stop running the rat race and start running the right race, it is in that journey that you will find the joy that you're looking for. Let's pray. God, we thank you, and we pause in this moment right now, just so grateful that you long to have a relationship with us, that you've designed us for that very thing. And so, God, I pray that we as a people would make that a priority in our daily lives, that we would find ways to put you first, to have you as our foundation that we then build our lives upon. Because, God, you are worthy of that. You're worthy of our dedication. You're worthy of our worship, and you're worthy to follow in this life. So, God, we ask that you help us with that you move in our hearts to desire that for ourselves. And we thank you for Jesus who made that possible. And it's in his name we pray. And as people said,